The hot button word for this week apparently is the word infestation. Infestation, the word infestation, because Trump has used it, is now a racist term that harkens back to post-World War II German propaganda regarding Jewish people in Germany. Joseph Goebbels, if you don't know who that is, and I'm not going to give you a history lesson, started to use film as a way to use propaganda for Nazi Germany before World War II. And one of the ways they did this is they took pictures, they took video, by today's standards, you call it video, of rats running around Germany or wherever, and they would take animation and they would morph the rats' faces to look like Jewish people. So they dehumanized Jewish people by calling them vermin, which rodents are typically called vermin. Okay, but vermin can also be any nuisance animal, to be truth. Coyotes are called vermin. Raccoons are called vermin. Any animal that is considered a nuisance animal is referred to as vermin. So the term was thrown around with German propaganda, but the point is the word still stands. All these words still stand. Vermin still stands. Infestation still stands. Okay? And the reality of life is really, really simple when you're dealing with any kind of vermin, okay, is the term infestation goes right along with it. Now, I'll give you a point. I am a new beekeeper, okay, and there are these beetles from sub-Saharan Africa. This is going to make me racist. These little black beetles that come from South Africa, basically, that have been accidentally imported into North America, that are huge pests in a honey beehive. You get one female in there that lays eggs, and it is over. They will infest the beehive so quick. They are so bad that they will force the bees to abandon their hive in a relatively quick period of time. The eggs hatch in 24 hours, and if the bees, it's not a strong colony, the bees, they leave. It's an infestation of hive beetles. Okay? Hive beetles are vermin for honeybees. Period. Let's take it another way. If you got cats and dogs and you don't treat them for fleas, your home is going to be infested with fleas unless you do something about it. Now, there is no proper way to describe a place that gets filled with rats. Okay, human beings and rats kind of go together like this. We can say this. Now, this hasn't been mentioned. It's been in the news a little bit, but LA is infested with rats. Now, when you say LA is infested with rats because of the homeless population, nobody is saying this is racist. Okay? Rats have infested the streets of LA. The next thing you're going to end up with is with bubonic plague because of rats. It's coming. And get ready for that. Get ready for that shitstorm because it's coming. So you have an infestation of rats. Chicago has an infestation of rats. I am on the streets of Chicago every single day. All right? Honest to God, I have had a rat run across my feet in broad daylight. I won't even say that rat ran. It lumbered. Now, I'm not afraid of rats. I'm not afraid of rodents. But seeing one just kind of lumber past my foot, and I'm telling you, within inches of my foot, it wasn't scurrying. It wasn't running. It was lumbering. And I just looked down, and I was talking to a guy that was next to me, and I said, it was not my imagination, or was that a rat that just walked across my feet? I see rats I see rats in downtown Chicago all the time, and it amazes me to their adaptability to live there. I mean, it's a predator-free environment, and all the free food you want. Is that most cities are infested with rats, some worse than the others. What really causes infestations of rats is unsanitary practices by human beings, which means you are not securing the garbage. Whether it's people putting the garbage out on the curb, whether they're how they're storing it in their alleys, or it has to do with the restaurants, and because the rats got to eat something. And they ain't eating grain and corn. It's not a farm. They are eating, I mean, some places, I've seen video of rats grabbing pigeons in New York City. So the term infested is a legitimate word. There's nothing racist about the term at all. It's a legitimate term. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a narrative from the media that using the term infested is a racial insensitive term. Look, if Baltimore is infested with rats, it's infested with rats. Okay? If Chicago's infested with rats, it's infested with rats. That is the reality. That's a fact. There's nothing you can do to change that. If it's rodent infested, and just a little side note, if you got rats, you're not going to have mice because the mice get eaten by the rats. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this. The rats will eat the mice and totally displace them. You can have a home that's infested with cockroaches. You can have a home that's infested with bed bugs. There's no other word. I can't come up with any other word. What are you going to say? You have a congregation of bed bugs in your home? We have sorry, Mr. Mayor, but we have a congregation of rats on the Lower East Side. I think we need to do something about that. Come on. Let's get real. You know what? And this is the problem with these Democrats and the media. The more they try to vilify Donald Trump with the usage of words, the more powerful you are making him. You are really making him more powerful. And what you're doing is you are taking people like myself and you're just reinforcing our thoughts on him and who he is. And you're making yourself and they're making themselves look like bigger fools to the American public. Look, you have two types of people in the world. You have non-thinking people and you have thinking people. And this doesn't have anything to do with education. Sometimes in my experience in life, the most educated people are sometimes the most non-thinking people there is. I have come to understand that some of the most highly educated people are non-thinking people, and I've been encountering this in the last couple of years of my life, and it makes me laugh. It just makes me laugh. Be a thinking person. Anybody with any rational thought knows if you're going to call someplace rat infested, you're not making a racial remark about it. It's colorblind. I mean, it's a colorblind issue. Now, there are a lot of poor areas in the United States. It's never really talked about. Appalachia is a really good example of these really dirt poor mountain folk that live along the Appalachian Mountains in various parts, from the Carolinas all the way up into Virginia and further north towards Maine. And you never hear these areas talked about because poor white people, let's use this as an example. These people in Appalachia, what they would call it, Appalachia, are very proud people. And the difference between them, those poor types of people versus what I would call urban poor. Yeah, there's urban poor and rural poor. Rural poor people will make an attempt to live off the land. They will hunt, they will fish, they will poach because they're trying to put food on the table. And I am not real familiar with rural poverty as much as I am urban poverty because I'm more exposed to urban poverty. And Rural poverty has a whole different flavor to it. But one of the things I've known the little bit of rural poverty that I've dealt with, and I've seen firsthand, and the limited interaction with the people, they're very proud and they're very independent, and they don't want to have the government subsidize their livelihood and how they live. That's the difference. Urban poor are a lot different. They want the government support. And how are you going to feed yourself when you're urban poor? If you're rural poor, you can go poach a deer. You go, catch a raccoon, cook a possum. You could feed yourself. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, that's always the way it has been with humanity when humanity was poor. If you could find, I mean, in the past, and when you had kings and queens, the poor people would poach off the kings and queens' land to put food on their table. They'd be sentenced to death if they got caught doing it, but that's how it was. Urban poor are a whole other difference. So, a whole other story. So if we're going to go with this infestation word, come on, man. Let's just, can you do any better? I mean, crime infested. You've all heard that term. I could show you the neighborhoods in Chicago that are crime infested. And the truth is, no human being really wants to live there if they don't have a choice. If you have the choice to get the hell out, you get the hell out. If you don't think this is true, let me tell you something. People that have the opportunity to get out of those crime-infested neighborhoods in any urban center, they leave. They leave and they don't want to come back. There's only a small percentage of people that make it big, and then they come back to where they came from to try to make it a different place, to try to better the place. But that's a whole other issue. There's all kinds of systemic issues of why some neighborhoods just stay a shithole. And there's a lot of reasons for it, and there's no quick fix, and I don't think the government can ever really fix it. I think what happens on a community level, the residents in these these crime-infested, rat-infested areas, they have to step up to the plate. Somebody's got to step up to the plate, get their community organizers together and do something about it. And if you got rats, the very first thing you can do is start cleaning up your garbage. Everybody has to do that. And I'm going to make a real quick story, and I'll draw it to an end. My first negative experience with a black person was when I was about 17 years old. And it was an older black man that I guess was probably about 60. And he worked part-time for a guy that I had to do some business with. Yeah, when I was about 16, 17. No, it's about 17. I was 17 or 18 years old. And I drive this truck down to this neighborhood, and I have to deal with this particular business owner that employed a few people from the neighborhood, and he was running up really cheap furniture up from the south and selling it. And so anyway, there was this nice older black gentleman that worked for him, and we got to talking one day. I remember it was right around Easter, and he, for some reason, I don't know, he asked me what my ethnic background was, and I told him that on my mother's side that I have German-Austrian heritage. And that triggered something in him to go down a Hitler path, which was really bizarre to me. I had no idea why, and he got a little wonky, and he gets on this kick about why white neighborhoods look the way they do and why black neighborhoods look the way they do. And he used the point of glass all over the neighborhood. So what he did is, I go to those white people neighborhoods and there's no glass on the street, and and I come back in my neighborhood and there's glass on the street. And I said to him, and this was from a 17, 18-year-old's perspective. I said to him this. I said, you know why there's no glass on the streets in the white neighborhoods? And he stops and he looks at me. I'm going to tell you why. Because when somebody breaks a glass bottle in the street, in the white neighborhoods, somebody comes out and sweeps it up. And the reason I remember this, because I remember that happening in my neighborhood. that somebody would throw out a beer bottle in the street in front of our house. It would bust in a million pieces. And my uncle would get out there with a broom and a dustpan and clean it up. Because he didn't want any kids to get hurt. Think about this. I distinctly remember this. And so what happens is if you're in a neighborhood where nobody gives a shit and people throw bottles in the street, that's back when there was broken glass everywhere. You don't see that now. Now it's just empty water bottles. But you can go into neighborhoods where people break glass everywhere. Nobody bothers to come out because this is their attitude. I didn't do it. It's not my job. I didn't throw it out there. When you live in a neighborhood where everybody has that attitude, you're gonna end up with rats, and you're gonna end up with infestations, and you're gonna end up living in a shithole. And that's really that's it. Poverty is no reason to live in degradation and filth. And in the past, when human beings figured out that there's a link between disease and cleanliness, the community as a whole would do something to make it cleaner. And if the community is not willing to do that, if you live in a community where nobody says, I don't care about it, it's not my business, it's not my problem, I didn't do it, you're gonna end up living in a shithole. It really is that simple, and it don't matter where the hell you live on the planet. It doesn't matter what neighborhood, it doesn't matter what city, and it doesn't matter what race it is. It is a human thing. And when human beings have that attitude towards where they live, then you're going to get everything that comes with it. And it's really, really that simple. It is not a racial issue. It's a human issue. So, in the meantime, I'm heading down to this crime-infested, rat-infested, bed-bug-infested shithole that's called Chicago. Have a lovely day.